Hello, my friends. Welcome to another edition of Raw Music Urban Sessions. I'm your host, Lorenzo Mamelli. Our guest tonight is Ryan Liatsis and his band. Ryan describes himself as a guitarist, a composer, an educator. He's a number of different things, and we're going to get to discover a few of them up close and personal on this program. Right now, let's meet Ryan Liatsis and the members of his band. Hi, Ryan.
How's it going?
How you doing? Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having us.
Your instrument is the guitar, of course.
Of course, that's my main jam right there, the guitar.
And introduce us to your band.
Yeah, so this is my buddy Scott Hogan on bass, and my buddy Mike Yaw on the drums.
Well, welcome again, gentlemen. So, Ryan, I was reading your bio before I came down here tonight, and there's a lot of interesting references you make in your bio. You say, first of all, you describe yourself that you're a man who's unmistakable because of two key things: your insanely talented work and your mustache. So, which one of those two is really the standard bearer for you? Is the mustache or the talented work?
I think we all know.
Okay, it is the mustache, isn't it? So, really, it's interesting. You describe yourself as a guitarist, an educator, and a composer. Equal parts of those things, or is there one that dominates more than the other?
I would say I'm mostly a guitar player at heart, but what I really love is writing songs, so I like to, they're mostly guitar-based songs, but I do like the idea of songwriting as opposed to just being necessarily like, I'm just a guitar player that shreds or whatever. So that's kind of where the composing element comes in, and that's also like in my later years I've gotten involved in more composing gigs, like doing work with video games and things like that. And so I guess that's kind of.
Do any of those three are more preferable to you? Do you enjoy any of those three more than the other two?
I would say sitting down and like kind of I guess the thing I love most is performing live. I'll say that. So in terms of that, but it goes hand in hand because I'm performing live and hopefully performing the things I've composed. So.
Well, performing is more of a collaborative process. Sure. I imagine as a composer's life is a bit more solitary when they're sitting down.
Yeah, definitely, right? When I'm at the computer and doing that kind of thing. Although sometimes, like some of those songs that we wrote, or that you heard tonight, one of them was written by Mike and we collaborated on it to make it what it is. And the other one, Oregon Trail, I had written. And then, when you bring it to the band, it kind of like gets its life. But yeah, mostly a lot of things that I write, I'm just by myself, either at the computer or just with a guitar in my hand. And just kind of coming up with things,
Now, you've been at this for a long time. It's mentioned in your bio that when you were 16, your dad, who worked in the AV field,
right,
helped to build your first home recording setup with you, and away you went.
That's right.
So what was that like? Your dad actually, what kind of a setup did he build for you?
Yeah, so I had a little mixer. I had a Mackie 1604 mixer, and I had a Tascam DA88, it's called, which is like a digital tape recorder that could record 8 tracks. And my dad showed me how to make overdubs and, just how to kind of like where to plug everything in. So that was really cool. It was a great experience to like be able to have that at my disposal at such a young age. And that sort of shaped where I went in terms of technology and stuff like that. I got very into sound engineering and studio engineering. And, luckily that's brought me to where I am today, where I have like a nice studio setup, and I learned all that stuff, and I can, because that's a very important part about being a musician. You have to be able to, I think, it's a really beneficial skill to be able to have a way to record the things that you hear in your head, because otherwise they're just in your head, and it could be really hard to get them out. So when you have those things at your disposal, you can get those ideas out, and you can make songs to bring to someone like Mike or Scott and say, hey, I made this piece and here's what I came up with for like a drum idea that you can elaborate on or whatever.
Let's hear a piece from Ryan Liatsis and his band. This is called Oregon Trail. Oregon Trail from Ryan Liatsis and his band. So Ryan, tell us about what an instrumental. Now, it's named after the Oregon Trail, which is a real place in this world, and
right.
it's. I'm wondering what inspired you to come up with a piece of music like that and what it has to do with the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, I think that when I was playing it, I don't know, I think just the sound of those couple guitar chords up front just sort of made me feel like this old kind of country-ish out west sort of feeling. And yeah, it just gave me like visions of that, like, you're out in the desert or something, or out in the woods, and it just made me think of the state of Oregon for some reason. And of course, when I've mentioned this before, but when I was a child, there was a game called the Oregon Trail on the computer, a very primitive computer game, and it was one of my favorite things to play when I was younger. So it made me think of that too, and that's just sort of how it went. And also, I think when I was playing, maybe the sound that I had on the guitar through the amp or whatever, sort of just gave me that, like, Western nostalgia kind of thing.
You mentioned computer games.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so curious about the process of how do you compose for a video game? Do you receive footage and then you sit there and watch it and inspiration comes to you? How does the process work?
Yeah, that's definitely a thing. They definitely send me like visuals and stuff like that. They give me, sometimes you have a very specific direction saying, hey, we need, this kind of style of a piece that's this many seconds long and or this many cues that we have to do in this genre, or so on and so forth. But then there are other games that are kind of loose, like one game that's very similar to the Oregon Trail kind of vibe. It's got this like, western-y, twangy guitar thing. It's called Snow Runner is the game, and you're basically just driving truck. It's kind of like meditative, slow-moving truck driving game. And in that one, I'm just kind of free to like make this ambient guitar music that's kind of like the backdrop of your driving experience, So it kind of varies, I would say, from those two kind of things,
Now, you're also in a band called Western Skies.
That's correct too.
So is that a more I imagine a more collaborative process than it is when you're composing for this particular project, which is more of, as we mentioned, a solitary endeavor. Do you prefer the band concept, or do you prefer the opposite?
Oh boy, I think that I couldn't possibly have a preference. I think they're both separate things. It's like you can't accomplish what you do on your own, what you can when you're collaborating with others, no matter what it is, even if it's a fully written piece, when you bring it to the other people in the band to perform, even if they're playing it note for note, it's totally different than what you created on your computer or at home. So I would say they both have their pluses and minuses, but I don't think I have a preference as to which one I like more. I like both of them, I like to collaborate and I like to make my own things,
Well, we have another example of Ryan's writing and the collaborative process with his band here on the program. Let's take a listen to this one. It's called Portal. Portals from Ryan Liatsis. So, Ryan, I really was fascinated by your influences, who you call revolutionaries, and the fact that these are three people that are usually not mentioned in the same breath, because they are three people who are really, musically, couldn't be more disparate from each other. And we have Frank Zappa, Hans Zimmer, and Slash. How in the world did you come to be influenced by those three very different people?
I know. Well, the first one is actually Slash. When I was young and learning guitar, I discovered Guns N' Roses, and I became completely obsessed, for whatever reason, with Slash's guitar playing style. So that's kind of like my humble beginnings of rock and roll guitar, and getting into that soloing lead guitar thing was from Slash. So that was huge for me when I was younger. And then later I discovered Zappa, and that's when my mind was completely blown, because it was like, why even make music? Because he's done absolutely everything possible. So that, of course, and then the mustache, obviously. And then Hans Zimmer came a little later, when I saw a concert of his live. I didn't see it in person, but I was watching it on TV. And one of my other favorite guitar players, more modern player, Guthrie Govan is his name. One of those super shredder kind of dudes. And I saw this. It was so cool. They were playing like this score from Batman, and Guthrie Govan's taking a crazy solo, and he's got the whole orchestra and all kinds of cool instruments and synths and things. And I was like, that's so cool. That's like the kind of thing I would love to be involved in, and that obviously tied into my video game thing with writing orchestral music and all that stuff. So that's kind of where those are three big things that I pull from a lot.
Well, let's also talk to the fine players that you have here with you tonight. Scott, tell us a little bit about your influences as well, and how it fits into the fabric of your work with Ryan.
I love jazz and fusion from the 70s, especially in the 80s and 90s. I worked with Ryan in a band called Schwiz. That was another kind of prog rock fusion-y sort of project. His writing's incredible.
Thanks.
And I toured for a while, for 4 years, with Bernie Worrell from Parliament Funkadelic, and he was a big influence on me. Sometimes when you're in a band with somebody and you get to hear them a lot, like that has sometimes more of an impact than just hearing it on the radio or whatever, or hearing it through a stereo system.
Drummers always are interesting. I imagine I'm going to hear some familiar names, but go ahead and share with us.
So I actually share a lot of the same influences as Ryan and probably Scott as well, and I think that's no coincidence. I think a lot of musicians that share tastes are kind of drawn to each other as players. So yeah.
Yeah, so you're a multi-instrumentalist, which I was unaware of, so I would have posed the question differently to you. But,
okay.
But now, gentlemen, in the time that we have left, I want to make sure that we give the audience an opportunity to know where they can find your music and any of the projects that you each are working on. So please take a moment and tell us where we can get your music.
Absolutely. So mostly you can find all my stuff on my website, ryanliatsis.com. And on my social media, ryan.liatsis. On Instagram is mostly where I'm posting things. I'm also on TikTok and YouTube. I post a lot of educational material too, like lessons and things like that, guitar lessons or just general music advice.
Okay.
So yeah, and a lot of the trio album that I have with Mike, Arrival, he's on that one. Scott is not on the recording. We have another bass player.
Okay.
But that's where you can find it, ryanliatsis.com and Instagram.
How about you, Mike?
I have all my solo stuff that I've produced, and that's on Bandcamp under the pseudonym Melodic Architect. And there's also a new band that I'm in that I'm really excited about. It's called Mood Drills. It's kind of like it's like a heavily Radiohead vibe influenced group, and they are just phenomenal musicians. It's shaping up to be a really cool project, so check them out on Instagram.
Cool.
Thank you.
Scott?
Scott Hogan Music on Instagram, website. I do a side project with Glenn Fitton, Scott Hogan, kind of world music, percussion based, a lot of percussion and bass. It's fun.
Cool. Well, gentlemen, we make sure that we check out all of those areas where we can find your music. Thank you all for being here with us on the program. Please check out my program on makerparkradio.nyc, The Rocker with Lorenzo Mamelli, which airs alternate Saturday mornings from 9 to noon, where we play a diverse hodgepodge of generation-spanning tunes that all come from across the rock spectrum. Once again, I'd like to thank you, our dear viewer, for joining us here on the program. That's it for now. Check out Ryan Liatsis and the music of these two extremely talented gentlemen that joined him this evening. We thank you for joining us, and please join us again next time on Raw Music Urban Sessions.